Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Really appreciate all the support. I was thinking about this when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie case, and you think about Nancy's family and her children and what they're going through right now and what they've been through with this whole thing. There's really only so many people who can understand that. There's not that many other cases that have been that high profile, that have had that much attention, that have had situations where family members have been sort of dragged through the mud. And one of those cases would be the JonBenét Ramsey case, which is just awful. JonBenét Ramsey found dead, murdered in 1996, still unsolved. But I had a conversation with her dad, John Ramsey, about the situation that Nancy Guthrie's family is in, because he can understand it in a way that almost no one else can. First of all, a lot of people thought that he was involved in his daughter's death, and he had to fight those accusations for years. And in this episode, he's going to talk about what that felt like in the moment, but also in his dealings with police. And he says that he has advice for the Guthrie family with everything they're going through based on his own experience with what he went through involving his daughter's investigation and the way the police handled it. So I want you to hear my full conversation with John Ramsey. I thought it was really interesting. I've obviously seen John Ramsey on TV a ton. I've seen him in documentaries, but I never really seen him just be able to speak his mind, not sort of in like TV sound bites. So I found it to be a really, really interesting conversation, and I wanted to share it with you guys. John, I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk with me. Thank you very much. I was watching some of your interviews that you did about the Guthrie case, and most of them were from, it's been 100 days now plus. Most of them were
Yeah,
from the first couple of weeks.
right.
And you were sort of giving advice about, what it's like to be in that situation with the Guthrie families. And I'm just curious now that it's been more than 3 months. What are your thoughts about the case?
Well, initially what I was paying attention to was what the police were doing and not doing, having learned a lot about what should be done in a serious case like that. And of course, it's hard to tell because you're getting little snippets of news here and there, and you're not sure what's accurate. But it appears there was a level of territorialism involved, and that's a huge problem in our country, in my opinion, the way we're structured. And that was a big problem in our case. The police didn't seek help from people that knew what they were doing. And help was offered. But we have 18,000 police jurisdictions in this country. The smallest one I'm aware of is a little town of 650 people in Ohio, has a part-time police chief and a part-time detective. That's the police department, but they're in charge. And there was a murder in that little town, and the police wouldn't ask for help at the insistence of the relatives. And the relatives took it to the legislature and said, "This is crazy that they have absolute authority, as all of these 18,000 jurisdictions have, on cases they have no experience or talent or resources to deal with. And yet the ego comes in and, yeah, we can solve this." We call it the Barney Fife syndrome, if you remember.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Barney was, in his mind, God's gift to law enforcement, and a skinny Wyatt Earp. He was going to get the bad guy. And Andy, a sheriff, wouldn't give him bullets for his gun because he's afraid to shoot somebody. But it's an ego thing, and I saw some of that, I think, based on the news reports and what was going on in the Guthrie case. Serious crimes, we need to respond maximum force and resources. Um, and I'm not sure that happened in that case. And the first couple of days are so critical to resolving a serious crime. DNA. In our case, the forensic people spent 2 hours in our house and said, "Well, we're done." And the DA said, "You can't be done in 2 hours. Get back in there, collect DNA evidence, collect evidence." I was told by sophisticated people that do this a lot, forensics, crime scene forensics. They said in a serious crime, we'll spend 3 days on site minimum looking for evidence, DNA evidence. And I think in the Guthrie case, they maybe spent a day and then they turned the house loose, and FBI came and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, not so fast. Can't be done yet, guys." And they said, "No DNA found." Well, there's DNA all over the place. And with today's technology, you can find DNA. May not be what you're looking for, but
Yeah,
so,
that was one of the strange things with the Guthrie case is, it seemed like there was a little bit of a battle between the sheriff and the FBI, and the sheriff kind of
well,
wanting to handle it himself, you know.
that,
But
that
my
was
thing is, why not let the FBI come in? They have hundreds of people. The sheriff
exactly.
would still end up looking good. I mean, if they solved it, the
And
regular Americans don't know the difference. They'd just be like, "Oh, the sheriff did a good job," or
that's
the FBI did, you know?
he brought in resources. He
Yeah.
managed the case. He wasn't trying to be Wyatt Earp and be the hero that rides in on a horse and solves the case. And that's so common, I'm afraid, in our system, the way it's structured. Each of these little jurisdictions have absolute authority for what goes on in their jurisdictions, with the exception of kidnapping, in which case the FBI has the authority to come right in, I believe, and bank robbery.
Mm.
The FBI can come in immediately, take the case over. What the FBI did, they said, "Well, we're letting the sheriff run the case, and we're available to help any way he wants." Nonsense. And the sheriff should have recognized that he needed all the resources he get hands on and said, "Come on in," but he didn't. And it's sad, but that happens a lot in our country, though, because of the way we're structured.
Hey guys, I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's episode, Incogni. Identity theft, it is such a big issue. I am always so paranoid every time I get a credit alert. I've had several family members and friends have their identities stolen, and it is just the worst. Criminals can get personal information. They use it for scams, stalking, harassment, all sorts of other illegal activities. And that is where Incogni comes in. It is a personal data removal service. It is so easy signing up online. It literally took me 1 minute, maybe even less. I'm always checking my dashboard. I just go to the website and I look at it. It shows hundreds of data brokers Incogni has contacted to make sure my data is not public, and it is always adding more every single time I check. They also have a new custom removal feature on the unlimited and unlimited family plans. If you see a website with your personal info, you put it into Incogni's custom removal feature, and one of Incogni's privacy agents will take care of the rest for you. So to check it all out, go to incogni.com/BrianEntin and use code BrianEntin for 60% off. Incogni helps wipe yourself from the internet. They can't harm you if they can't find you. Click the link below to claim your 60% off and get your personal data off the market. What was it like, again, now that it's been 3 months since Nancy went missing, and I'm just thinking of you and what you went through with JonBenét. How do your emotions change over that time? I mean, is it true, like the different phases? Like, is it shock and then some? Like, do you remember the 3 month period? What that sort of felt like?
Well, for me, not knowing was 6 hours, and that's horrible. Uh, not, my child is out there. It's dark, it's cold, there's snow on the ground, and some creature's got her, and this angst of not knowing. And quite frankly, when I found her, at first I thought I'd found her. I thought she was alive and just sleeping, perhaps. And there's this huge rush of relief. Thank God I found her. And then I realized that she was gone. And you move in. Now it's like, okay, well, that's the worst thing you can imagine, but um, it's a, I won't say it's a solution. It resolves that horrible angst and imagination of what could be happening to my child. I knew JonBenét now was in heaven, and that, as much as I wish he wasn't at the moment, that I could deal with that. So as time went on, we were told by an inside source, we don't know who it was, but it came through a friend that relayed this message to us. They said, "Tell John," this is like on the day after JonBenét was found, "Tell John to get the best defense attorney to get his hands on because they think he killed his daughter." And it didn't matter what they thought. It was like I'd lost my child. That nothing more could hurt me any deeper than that. So we knew the police thought that, and it's like, well, okay, whatever. That was the least important thing in our grief. And so as time went on, it became very obvious that they were very focused on Patsy and I, and they weren't sure which one. And we were told by the DA years later that they decided it was a family member because we didn't act right, and it's always the family. And but they didn't know which one, so let's just put pressure on both of them. The innocent one would turn the guilty one in, case solved. That was the whole strategy. This came from the DA several years later. And so they released a lot of misleading information, false information to the media, and the media ran with it, probably way beyond what they expected. And Gallup did a poll. Why I don't know. They did a poll. I don't know, months later. 70% of those polled felt that the family was guilty. And of course they did, because that's what they were told. And of course the tabloids ran with it very sensationally, including accusing my 9-year-old little boy of being the murderer, and just crazy stuff. And but the police were feeding it a bit, and they certainly weren't looking for the killer. They were trying to figure out how to prosecute and get enough put together to force the DA to arrest either Patsy or both, I guess. And the big problem they had in our case was they found unidentified male DNA a couple weeks later, and that was a problem for the police because that conflicted big time with their conclusion, what they wanted to conclude and did conclude. So it was just a mess. But the real fundamental tragedy in our case, and it seems to be to some degree in the Guthrie case, there's lots of help offered, qualified help. In our case, it was all refused. Denver police offered 3 homicide detectives, experienced. Boulder had no homicide detective. The guys working on our case were an auto theft investigator and a drug, whatever you call him, drug guy,
Yeah.
bad guy selling drugs. They didn't know anything about homicides. If that they were in charge. And I got a feeling that may have been the case in the Guthrie case too, where um, it appears, I don't know, but I don't know that they had a homicide detective or anybody experienced in homicides. And that's a big deal. It's
Yeah, they were
homicide.
inexperienced, by the way. Not to interrupt you, but they all had less than 2 years for the most part. The
Yeah.
folks who came in right away.
And, a good detective, that comes from years of experience. And you just don't take a guy out of a squad car and say, okay, now you're a detective. The detectives are good detectives. I've learned that are a unique breed, and just because you say you're a detective doesn't mean you have the discipline to follow the evidence, and that's what was lacking in our case, big time. But most important, they refused help, and it appears some of that was going on in the Guthrie case too, where they wouldn't give the FBI access to the evidence. Don't know if that's true, but that's what was reported. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
What was it like when you're, grieving your daughter, um, and then wanting to figure out what happened, obviously wanting some justice, and then I guess you said you got a sort and you knew that they thought you or someone in your family did it. So were you still communicating with the police or were you sort of nervous to talk to them or?
Well, no, we wanted to. Uh, we certainly they've got enough common sense to, you know, see that we're not child murderers. There's no history in our family of problems. Um, we don't have any problem talking to them, but our attorneys, being defense attorneys, they take the position that to the police, if you think our clients are guilty, prove it. We're not going to talk to you. And so they sat us down with a group of experienced people. I remember one retired homicide detective out of Southern California was in this group, and we came back to Boulder to work with the police. And he said there are more innocent people in prison today for one reason, and that reason is that their attorneys let them talk to the police. And it's like, wow. Well, they also told us, which we didn't know this, but JonBenét was buried in Atlanta, which was our home. We lived in Atlanta for a long time, and we had a cemetery plot there where my oldest daughter was buried. Was killed in a car accident a couple of years before. And so we knew where JonBenét would be buried, and we made arrangements to get her back there and have a ceremony. And we were told this later. We didn't know this at the time. The police refused to release her body until you consent to come in for an interview. And we'd already interviewed with them for hours, but we were staying at a friend's home. And they came to us and said, "Hey, we want you to come down to the station." Well, our friend's house is surrounded by media cameras, and Patsy's, comatose almost. I said, "We can't come to the station. You come here. We'll talk to you all you want, but we're not gonna get dressed and come to the station." I said, why do you want us to come to the station? Well, we have papers there. So we'll bring the papers here. And a good friend of mine who had worked in the DA's office and was an attorney stepped in and said, "John, would you allow me to do some things here that I think are necessary?" And I said, "Yeah." He told the police, "We're not going to the station. We'll get back to you." And that's when the conflict started.
Mm-hmm.
And we were shocked that they refused to release her body. Now my friend, the attorney, screamed bloody murder at the DA and said that's absurd. And the DA overrode that decision. But the police were being jerks, basically. And but we still thought, well, they're not idiots. They've got some level of common sense, but we really had no problem talking to them. We did for 2 or 3 hours that day and the day after, but we thought, well, we better listen to our attorneys, and of course, if you hire an attorney, you're immediately tagged as, well, you must be guilty then. And that's not true. Sometimes it is, but, and we didn't hire him. My friend brought him in. The next day he introduced me to my attorneys, and I'd had that message in the back of my head. I didn't tell anybody that I'd gotten that warning that they were out to get me. So that, well, okay, I guess we need attorneys. And if you hire an attorney, you better pay attention to them. And so we didn't have, for good reason, a relationship with the police after that period. And the other element was our attorneys introduced themselves to the police, and then we now represent John and Patsy, and we'd like transcripts of the earlier interviews they did, which is very standard practice. The police wouldn't give them to them. And it's like, okay, there's not going to be any more interviews till we get the transcripts of the hours of interviews I've already done with them. They wouldn't do it. So it was just a mess. But the big mess was they refused help from people that knew what they were doing. They didn't know what they were doing. And And I'm afraid there was some of that going on in the Guthrie case.
Yeah, and they've, very different than your case. The sheriff came out and said that, no one in the family is a
Yeah.
suspect. And I have a source who says that there were polygraphs done and, they've cleared them essentially. Although some people say you can't really clear anyone until you have someone else, but the sheriff has said that they're cleared. But
We had
despite
taken
that,
we had taken a polygraph test.
you did too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're just determined to be truthful.
And they still didn't back off?
Mm-mm. Well, this is like a year later.
Yeah.
I'd done an interview, or 2 years later, maybe. Our attorneys wouldn't let us talk to the media, and they wouldn't talk to the media. They said, we don't practice law in front of a TV camera. We practice in front of a judge.
Do you think
And
that was a mistake looking back now? I mean, you
yeah,
think
well, they said it was a real dilemma because you were being prosecuted in the court of public opinion, and we don't know how to deal with that. There's no evidentiary rules or procedural rules. And they said, we're not trained to do that. Now, in front of a judge, that's what we're trained to do, and we can do our job. But in front of a camera, in front of you know, thing like that, I said it was a real problem for us because we knew you're getting prosecuted, but we don't have the skills, and it's a Wild West crazy environment.
Mm.
I said, we will defend you in court, and we will promise you one thing: we'll destroy them if they think you killed your daughter and indict you for that. Don't worry about that. In court, there's so much evidence contrary to what their solution or their conclusion was. Don't even worry about that. You shouldn't have to go through it,
Did
but
it hurt though that so many, and I'm asking you this because obviously with the Guthries, despite them clearing the family, and I've been covering the case since the beginning, there's no evidence that anyone in the family is involved. And despite
right.
that, though, there's still this group of people that continues to point fingers online and just doesn't let it
Oh yeah,
go. I mean,
yeah,
does that, when you went through that, did that hurt very badly, or is it like you said, you're almost numb from losing your daughter that like
yeah.
nothing.
It didn't hurt. I mean, looking back on it now, um, you think, man, that was nuts. But no, it didn't matter. I mean, we knew who we were. Our friends supported us strongly. We'd lost our child. You couldn't hurt. And Patsy said, "You can't hurt me anymore than you've hurt me." So it doesn't matter. I've told people, look, you're out for a walk in the woods one day and you come across a body and you call the police. Guess who the number one suspect is? You, initially. Well, what were you doing in the woods? Why were you there at that time? How'd you happen to go by that spot? It was kind of remote. And then they'll move on to the next periphery.
Yeah.
But there and you call, you're the suspect. That's just a fact. And so we sort of understood that we were needed to be investigated as family members.
Mm.
We understood that. But to have reached that conclusion on day one before any evidence was recovered was amateur, immature detective work.
And that was before social media too. I mean, I just think about
Yeah.
now.
Oh
Now
yeah.
you've got like armies of people coming after you. Granted, you also have people who support you and you see them too, which you didn't really get to see, I guess.
Well, we didn't certainly. Well, we didn't pay attention to the media at all because we didn't. It was not relevant. We were deeply wounded by the loss of our child, and the in fact, we took television out of our house. We just wouldn't even bring it into the house. Unfortunately, our friend would say, "You can't believe what they said last night."
Right.
Don't tell us. We don't want to know. But I never could understand. It didn't make sense to why the police had no common sense at all. And 68% of the time, sadly, it's a caregiver when the child was murdered at home. I did research that, but in almost if not all, most all of those cases, there's a long history of problems in that family. The police have been called to the house. The neighbors know there's a problem. The schools know there's a problem. If that doesn't exist, parents just don't wake up one day and decide to kill their child.
Yeah.
It's you got to you got to cut it one more. Yeah, you're in the house, you're the parents. What else would support such a bizarre behavior? And if it wasn't there, then you better move on. Well, they didn't move on.
It's strange how much, I mean, technology has come so far since your case, since JonBenét was murdered.
Yeah.
You think about DNA, and in the
Oh,
Guthrie case, they've got the photos from the doorbell camera.
yeah.
Um, it's hard to believe it's unsolved, and that not only unsolved, but there really, I don't think is a lot of progress even.
Doesn't appear to be. No. Um, it's a very strange crime. I was again reading in the newspaper whether it was accurate or not. I don't know, but the police just originally thought, well, she probably just wandered off, being an 84-year-old person. Well, I'm 83. I don't wander off in the middle of the night.
Right.
So if there's no history, probably not. That's probably not what happened. If there's blood on I mean, just poor detective work, frankly. Um, but the one of my consolation or understandings, I guess, was the Bible book of Proverbs talks about fools, and it said there are fools in the world. Keep them out of your life. Don't try to reason with them. Don't try to argue with them. Just keep them away from you. Keep them out of your life. And I thought, well, these people are fools. I can't. I'm not going to be able to reason with them, and just accept that.
What is it like? I mean, you said you're 83, right?
Almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost. Okay, 82. Uh, I mean, I've seen you speak before. You've become an advocate for other families going through awful things. Um, what is it like all these years later? I mean, it must still be painful because you have such strength when you speak, you know what I mean? And
Well, I know John Benet's in heaven. When my first daughter was killed in a car accident, a total accident, uh, it really took me to my faith to its knees. And I thought, there is no God. How could a loving God let this happen to a wonderful child that's just starting out on her life, basically? And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. People came alongside and helped me with that process. And it gave me almost a foundation, a faith foundation that I could then handle JonBenét's murder much more. Beth, my oldest daughter, it was an accident. Life's risky. Accidents happen. In JonBenét's case, it was a willful act of another human being. That's a more difficult thing to get your head around. How could this is a demonic monster that would take a 6-year-old child from her bed on Christmas night, sexually abuse her, torture her, and kill her. I mean, it's nothing short of demonic. And that's what's hard to get your head around, that there are people. I saw somebody said, we really all live in a pretty bad neighborhood. It's called Earth. And don't be naive just because you live in a gated community or we
yeah,
thought Boulder was a la la land, flowers coming up and nice community. It's a beautiful community, but there are a lot of weirdos in that town, as there are in every town.
yeah, I remember the last big moment where I thought, gosh, maybe, there's going to be some kind of resolution with JonBenét's case was when the new chief came in and said that they had some new leads and there were things they were looking into, and it felt very promising or hopeful.
Well, yeah, and that had to happen before anything happened because their lead. I've always faulted their leadership 100%. You get young guys that eager to solve the world's problems, and if they don't have a good leader, they're going to go haywire, as the two detectives that worked on our case for years did. They had very poor leadership. And when they brought in a new chief, they terminated they retired him, let's put it that way. The detective that had our case for 25 years, that was a huge step forward. They brought the new chief in from outside that culture, had a lot of experience. Um, the detective that was in charge of our case is gone. That had happened. So it was like, okay, now we maybe can make some progress. And but until that happened, nothing was going to happen.
Is there still progress? I mean, do you
Well,
think there's still progress happening?
met with the new chief. I probably met with him, I don't know, 4 times over the last year and a half, 2 years that he's been in office. And I respect him. He's a competent leader, as far as I can tell, and has good experience. And but he won't tell me anything. And I sort of get that. Lou Smith, who was that legendary detective that was brought in by the DA in Boulder to work on our case, and within a month or two said, "Now the parents were involved with this. This is clearly an intruder, and there's lots of evidence for it." Lou wouldn't talk to the media. He said, "That's not my job. My job is to find JonBenét's killer." And he finally did agree to an interview a couple years later, just because it was so um, biased and crazy, the stuff that was out there, and he knew it was not right. So he did talk to the media, but he didn't plan on that. And he didn't like to do it. So a good police department keeps their mouth shut.
Mm.
Now, they ought to tell the parents something. But we did the last meeting we had with the chief of police. He said, "I'm more optimistic now than I've ever been that we'll get a solution." And so that's the best encouragement we've had. You know, what we've been pushing hard for, DNA is, 30 years ago, it was kind of a new thing, and FBI had this database CODIS set up where if you had a bad guy, you put his DNA in CODIS, and then if you had another crime, you'd look in the bad guy file to see if there's any match. Well, that was all we had 30 years ago. Now, with investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, it's like a
Yep.
nuclear weapon for crime solving. It's
Amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so we impressing the police, use IgG, please. I think there's 70% chance that'll solve the case. But they've got to do it. I hope they're doing it, but we don't know.
I hate to use the word club, it's a weird word, but you're kind of in this weird club of like people. There's sadly, a lot of murders and a lot of murders that get a lot of coverage, but there's only a handful that had the kind of exposure yours did.
All right.
And I think that Guthrie sort of falls into that category too, where
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just the whole country knows about your case. I mean, every single person, regardless of where they live, has heard about it, is following it.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you went through. And again, I can't think of that many. There's a lot that are people talk about or you hear about here and there, but there's only a few where it's in the full-on mainstream.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just curious, what would you say to the Guthries? I mean, they're obviously in the thick of it now, and you understand in a way that most people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think don't assume the police are doing everything they can do. They may be, but don't assume that. Don't assume they know what they're doing. They may, but don't assume that. Um, and really scrutinize what they're doing. Ask questions. Um, DNA. Did, what's the status of the DNA? Do you have DNA that doesn't match anybody in the family? What are you doing with it? Just putting it in CODIS, that's obsolete. That's not gonna that's not gonna result. That worked for 30 years ago. That's all we had. But now you can employ IgG and create a family tree, and with pretty good probability, get a name on the killer. And so just really, you got to, it's like they say when you're in the hospital, you got to have an advocate.
Mm.
To make sure the hospital and the nurses and the doctors are doing everything that can be done for your person you're advocating for, your relative. Usually, you got to be an advocate in your system. Don't assume the police. Police departments at best are multi-purpose agencies. They handle everything from traffic tickets to speeding tickets to serial murders. You can't do everything well, and it's imperative they bring in all the resources they can bring in uh, to help. And we got introduced to a group called the Cold Case Foundation, and it's like a Mayo Clinic in the medicine field. They've got 150 or so experts in their group that are volunteers. So probably some of them are retired, maybe all of them are, I don't know, but they've got a lot of experience in different aspects of, handwriting, forensics, psychology, just whatever needs to be pulled in on a case, they can pull it in. And that's a huge resource. So there are resources like that. You can't assume your local police department is good at everything. And I think just be sure they're bringing in all the resources that can be brought in. Look at the Cold Case Foundation. Look at that.
Yeah.
And typically we were told by the cold case guys, they said, usually the police don't want to work with us because it's their case, they want the glory. And so we prefer to work behind the scenes with the police. They can have the glory. We don't care. But they said it's difficult to get the police to accept help. And it's crazy to not insist on that. It's like your family doctor. I mean, he can fix a lot of things, broken finger, cold, but he can't do heart surgery.
Yeah.
This is heart surgery.
Well, you made a good point with the hospital because even I had a family member in the hospital recently, and you kind of amazed when you're sitting there with them every day. Like if you don't remind the nurses and the doctor, you're like, would they have even noticed this? Would they have even, you just assume that that's their job, but you really do
Yeah,
have to be there kind of pushing everything along. And
yeah.
I guess it's a similar thing when you have a investigation going.
I believe it is very similar. And if you need heart surgery, bring in a heart surgeon.
Mm,
Don't expect the local police department to have that skill. And normally they wouldn't. I mean, in medicine, if your doctor thinks, my gosh, you need heart surgery, he's going to say, hey, I'm going to take a whack at that. I need the glory. No, he'll bring in a heart surgeon and refer you immediately and get help. And that's that's kind of a fundamental potential flaw in the way our system is organized. We have 250,000 unsolved homicides in this country. That's appalling.
wow. That's a huge number. Yeah.
And then Colorado has 1,100, over 1,000 unsolved homicides. That's crazy. That's the most serious, to me, that's one of the most serious crime that could be committed, to take someone else's life. And you leave it up to Barney Fife if it happened in Mayberry. The woman that was advocating for help in her sister's case, I think, in this little town in Ohio where the police wouldn't, the part-time chief of police wouldn't ask for help. She said, justice should not depend on your zip code. And that is a fact, yet it does
Mm.
in our country. The way we're organized that way because we evolved that way. Tombstone, Arizona was founded as a town 100 years ago, I guess. We need a lawman in here. Let's get Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp comes in. He's the law in Tombstone. And Wyatt Earp's not going to ask for help. He's the law.
Yeah.
We got 18,000 Wyatt Earps in this country.
It's sort of built into the culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a
Yeah.
culture problem.
Yeah.
This Moscow, Idaho case where those students were murdered. I
Yeah.
say, like, how big is Moscow? 30,000 people. Oh boy, that's not good. They won't have a homicide detective or anything. And the chief of police got up there and said, we're going to manage this case. That's not good at all. But he managed it. He didn't try to solve it. He managed it. He brought in 40 FBI agents. He brought in the state police. He
Yeah.
managed the case, and they had an arrest in 3 weeks.
Yeah, they had the FBI in right away.
Yeah, they used Optum Labs, which is the premier, one of the premier DNA labs in the
Yeah.
country. And that's
Yeah.
what we've been telling the Boulder police to use. You can't lose. State government does not have IgG technology yet. I'm not even sure the federal government does. It's so new, but it's so powerful. And there are private labs that have that technology and have done all this amazing cold case solution work, but they have to be asked and invited.
Mm.
Authors would be happy to help, but they have to be asked. It's crazy.
Well, I appreciate your time, John.
You're welcome,
Thank you
Brian.
very much. I enjoyed talking with you and appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for the interest.
Really appreciate John for taking the time to talk with me, for opening up to me about everything he went through. I really appreciate you guys for checking out the show, for subscribing, for sticking with me through all of this as I continue to follow the Nancy Guthrie investigation. I'm still in New York City, as you can see. It's crazy. It's like never stops here. It's late at night and it's still going. But I'll keep you guys posted if there are any developments, and I'll talk to you guys later.